Breaking news, Republican senators breaking with the president today, saying they support keeping families together.
But President Trump is standing firm on his policy of separating children from their family caught crossing into this country illegally. Now, President Trump met with congressional Republicans late today to discuss immigration. The meeting comes as he escalates his hardline stance.
And CBS2 political reporter Dave Bryan joins us now in the newsroom with today's developments and more backlash against that policy. Dave?
That's right, Pat and Jeff. President Trump met with GOP leaders for nearly 45 minutes. The meeting coming as a dozen Republicans spoke out against the zero tolerance policy. And the outrage now over separating children from their parents has spilled into the president's own party. President Trump arriving at the Capitol Tuesday evening to talk immigration with Republicans.
The system has been broken for many years, the immigration system. It's been a really bad system, probably the worst anywhere in the world. We're going to try and see if we can fix it.
45 minutes later, the president walked out with House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy from Bakersfield by his side.
These are laws that have been broken for many years, decades. But we had a great meeting.
But as President Trump exited in the Capitol hallways, some Democratic members of Congress held up signs and shouted at him.
Don't you have kids, Mr. President?
Earlier, the president gave no sign he was ready to back down on the separation of families, instead blaming the news media and the Democrats for creating and supporting the broken immigration system, which he says created the crisis of breaking up families.
Democrats love open borders. Let the whole world come in. Let the whole world, MS-13 gang members from all over the place, come on in.
And when asked by CNN's Wolf Blitzer about what has changed in the federal immigration policy about separating children from their families, the acting director of ICE backed up President Trump.
We're law enforcement officers. We will enforce the laws enacted by Congress, laws on the books. This president is letting them do their job, which the last president did not do.
However, the support of Republicans for the current policy of separating children from their parents who are seeking asylum but crossing the border illegally is caving in now among Republicans.
I support, and all of the members of the Republican conference support, a plan that keeps families together while their immigration status is determined.
CNN is now reporting that at least a dozen Republican senators are calling on the administration to end the separation practice.
All of us who are seeing these images of children being pulled away from moms and dads in tears, we're horrified. This has to stop.
Now, one GOP lawmaker who attended the late evening meeting with President Trump said it wasn't helpful as far as coming to a solution or passing either immigration bill. There are two now under consideration. He told CNN the meeting, quote, didn't move the ball. Pat, Jeff, back to you.
All right, and there we are. Thank you, Dave Bryan. Well, locally, protesters are demanding the Trump administration stop separating families.
That's right. Today, they are taking what they call a caravan of justice directly to members of Congress.
And CBS2's Kara Finstrom talked with them outside the offices of Republican Congresswoman Mimi Walters in Irvine.
A group of protesters is traveling to lawmakers' offices today in a caravan. One of their stops right behind us here at offices of Republican Representative Mimi Walters.
Escucha, estamos en la lucha.
The group is protesting the Trump administration's immigration policies. They specifically oppose the two immigration bills being discussed on Capitol Hill today, which they call hardline proposals. The group wants Walters and other representatives to vote against both bills and to push for what they see as a true solution.
We're tired of them criminalizing our parents. We're tired that there has been many attempts to push for some kind of DREAM Act, federal DREAM Act, and Congress has done nothing in order to push for it on the floor.
The demonstrators also believe the policy of separating children from their families is being used as political leverage to get one of the bills passed. A representative from Walters' office told us as a mother, Representative Walters opposes separating families and wants to see that stop. And Representative Walters was not at these offices today. A spokesperson tells us she is in D.C. Reporting here from Irvine, Kara Finstrom, CBS 2 News.
Cara, thank you so much. And still to come here at 5 o'clock for the second time in days, a boat full of illegal immigrants comes ashore in Orange County. Will family separation have more people bypassing the border to take their own chances on the ocean? That's coming up in our second half hour here on CBS 2 News at 5.
Now breaking news, L.A. County prosecutors say there will be no charges against actor Scott Baio. Former co-star Nicole Eggert recently accused Baio of sexually abusing her when they worked together on the TV show Charles in Charge in the 1980s. Prosecutors say there will be no charges because the statute of limitations has expired. Baio has always denied the allegations, but he does say he had sex with Eggert after he turned 18.
A coffee break at a Burbank Burger King turned violent today when someone walked in and then started stabbing a man.
And CBS2's Christy Fajardo is live there with what witnesses saw and what a Good Samaritan did. Christy.
Yeah, Pat and Jeff, it looks like the Burger King, which was actually featured in the Back to the Future film, has just reopened its drive-through. Police tell us of the two people who were injured, one was actually the suspect who was gravely wounded, apparently during the struggle to get his knife away from him. As for his victim, police tell us he's a man in his 70s who should recover.
All of a sudden, here comes this guy, starts screaming and stabbing my friend.
Paul Leotopoulos and James Kezios are crediting a Good Samaritan with saving their lives and that of their friend.
The other guy, black guy, come in, we hold him down. Otherwise, I will be dead today.
The pair was having coffee with their elderly friend at this Burger King, like they do every day, when they say a man took out a knife and attacked their friend for no reason.
I go like this. I didn't know he had a knife. I thought he was hitting him, my friend. And then I see blood all over, you know what I mean?
They say the man was yelling incoherently and then turned the knife on them.
And all of a sudden, he comes to me, and I grab a chair and I hold him back like this and push him.
That's when they say a Good Samaritan selflessly tackled the man, wrestling the knife out of his hand.
He's absolutely considered a hero if he came to the rescue.
A hero who police say stepped in to protect a man in his 70s from what appears to be a random but brutal attack. And although these friends for 40+ years can't believe they came across someone who may have wanted to kill them, that uneasy feeling was offset by the hero who wanted them to live. Police say the Good Samaritan had just ordered his food when he noticed what was going on. They are not releasing his name, but say he is okay and did not have to go to the hospital. Back to you.
Christy Fajardo reporting live for us tonight. Well, police right now in Long Beach are looking for a killer on a bicycle. A man was found shot to death overnight, and investigators say the victim is a homeless man in his 30s. They say whoever pulled the trigger took off on a bicycle moments after that shooting.
It's kind of sad. It's a young life that's been taking. A lot of homeless people, but once in a while you hear or you see about stuff like that.
All right, now police are hoping to find security camera video from a nearby business that will help them make an arrest. A convicted felon faces serious jail time after he was found with 553 guns. By law, he's not supposed to have even one. FBI, ATF, and LA County Sheriff found those guns inside two Agua Dulce homes last week. We're told a tip led them to one stash on Caprock Road, where they arrested 60-year-old Manuel Fernandez. That seizure led to another home on Sweetwater Drive where more guns were found, but a female suspect was not. Deputies are still looking for her.
Officer-involved shootings in the city of LA are on the rise, and that was the conclusion of the 2017 Use of Force report presented today to the LA Police Commission. 400-page study also revealed some other noteworthy statistics. In addition to the 10% increase in officer-involved shootings last year compared to 2016, 57% of the suspects involved in those shootings were Hispanic, 22% were white, and 20% were African American. Also in the report, 13 incidents involved people with mental illness, and that is a fourfold increase from 2016.
The other thing I think that is important to remember is that in almost a quarter, 23% of the officer-involved shootings, the suspect fired at the officers or other individuals during the incident. So we can't lose sight about how dangerous police work is, and that the officers, of course, have a right to defend their own lives and an obligation to defend the lives of others.
The report also says nearly 75% of officer-involved shooting suspects were armed with a gun or other weapon, and nearly a quarter of the shootings involved suspects actually firing at officers.
Breaking news in the battle between porn star Stormy Daniels and President Trump's attorney Michael Cohen. Now, a federal judge in L.A. has denied Daniels' request to lift a 90-day stay of her suit against the president and Cohen. Now, Daniels, whose real name is Stephanie Clifford, says she had an affair with Trump and that Cohen paid her $130,000 to keep quiet about it. Clifford wants to nullify that non-disclosure deal.
Well, meanwhile, Michael Cohen is reportedly hiring a very experienced criminal trial lawyer to represent him. That lawyer, Guy Petrillo, previously headed up the criminal division of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan. Cohen has not been charged with a crime, but is under investigation for his personal business dealings, including that payment to Stormy Daniels. Cohen parted with his previous legal team last week.
Well, we do have some breaking news going on right now in Koreatown. Stu Medell is live in Sky 2 with the latest. Stu?
Well, Jeff, Pat's happening out here at 6th and Berendo, and we are over Koreatown, but that might change. That's what's going on down here. This is actually a vote to add a new city, basically split Koreatown into two portions. The other portion would be the city of Little Bangladesh. Now, this is a vote that's been going on out here since about sometime this afternoon. Some of these folks have been waiting in this line. Take a look at that turnout. Some people have been waiting in this line since 2 o'clock in the afternoon just to get their votes in. Huge turnout out here. The city is very interested in this, and they are voting in force. No traffic issues to talk about. One of the reasons, though, they're saying the voting is going so slow is there's only 2 polling stations out here right now, though. The vote is still happening, and we'll see what that vote has to say later on this evening. Live in Sky 2 over Koreatown. I'm Stu Medell. Back to you two in the studio.
All right, Stu, thanks for that. People are really lined up there. Well, it was a short chase with a long list of destruction.
I'm Jasmine Veal here in Panorama City, where a police chase ended when a woman suspected of driving under the influence crashed right here.
Well, it turns out that woman behind the wheel was actually a child. Jasmine has that story next.
And graduation vacation ruined. Local students say they lost thousands. We'll tell you what happened. So tough and so cute. We'll show you where this furry family of 4 was just found in Southern California.
And here we go. Summertime is upon us. Excessive heat warnings have been widely scattered out throughout the area. Now we'll show you all that coming up.